You Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Words on Whiskey and happy Irish Whiskey Day to one and all. You're all very welcome. I hope you've had a good day and we'll celebrate with some fine Irish whiskey this evening. And thank you for joining us. So as part of the celebrations, we've decided to offer our listeners a special offer where they can save €10 by subscribing to Irish Whiskey Magazine. We hope you're keeping safe and keeping well, and the celebrations won't be soured too much by it being in lock-in, but there seems to be a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, so hopefully we will be meeting in person soon and celebrating. We have a very special guest with us this evening. I'm privileged to have Lora Hemy with us, head distiller at Roe & Co., and we'll have a chat with her shortly. There's one person I wanted to wish happy birthday to, belated happy birthday, and that's the man behind the scenes here on the podcast that's been helping from day one. So I just wanted to say thank you, personal thank you to Andrew Rooney, who was part of Dublin Whiskey Tours and part of the Dublin Whiskey Experts. Just thank him for all his hard work behind the scenes. I think it's a credit to him that we haven't had any catastrophes as of yet. So happy birthday, Andrew. And let's kick off and just bring in Lora. Good evening.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm very well. Happy Irish Whiskey Day.
Thank you. Happy Irish Whiskey Day to you too.
Has it been a different day for you, or is it much the same?
No, sure. Look, we've been pretty busy and in production, so half on site, half on the laptop, which is fairly usual.
Yes, yeah. How much can you do on the laptop?
A fair bit in terms of meetings.
Yeah.
We're pretty set up remotely, so I can chat to everybody really that I need to talk to when we've got cameras where we need to. So that's great. But obviously, it's an operational role, so I'm on site as much as I can be.
Yeah, yeah. Look, we've talked about having a conversation with you so many times before, and of course, the lockdown played a bit of a scupper on that. We really wanted to do a piece with you in the magazine, but this is the second best option. Or some might say the best. But so thank you very much for joining us here. I know you're very busy. So
thanks for having me.
Yeah. But look, obviously you're at home at the moment. Tell me, how have you managed to cope during lockdown?
Well, I've ended up with some really sort of boring hobbies that probably lots of people that have known me a long time wouldn't expect me to have. So I've started things like running, which feels a bit middle-aged. I'm going to be 40 in a couple of months, so maybe that's kind of the right approach. But yeah, running, cycling, reading a bit, and doing my garden.
Okay.
So yeah, all very sedate and at home.
Yeah. How long are you over here now, Laura?
Coming up for 3 years. Unbelievably.
Is it 3? Wow.
Almost 3. It'll be 3 in the summer. Feels yesterday, but also feels like much longer than that as well. And obviously the last year as well as I don't know. It's home.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. And have you been welcomed and made feel at home where you are?
Yeah, look, it's hard not to be. I live literally round the corner from the distillery, so I'm just off Meath Street. It's a pretty special area. I know all the neighbours and the people in the shops, and it's this is a very welcoming area. It has its own special character. I love it, and I can't really picture myself living anywhere else in Dublin, to be honest. So I've been here so long. I'm still in the same house I moved straight into. It's very much so.
It's a very special part of the city. The Liberties, of course, is really vibrant, and of course, with all the distilleries opening up, and you create an employment, and other companies create an employment for people. It's
100%.
great.
It's really important.
Yeah, I mean, you do give back a lot to the community as well, where you can take part in activities, and you have, stalls set up outside the distillery.
Yeah, well, one of the things we did over the last summer when we could run outdoor dining was open up the front space to local restaurants. So we were really lucky, and obviously we love Variety Jones and what they do, so we were able to open that up to them. And Salty Boy, Niall Sabongi, again, incredible stuff. But we've been able to share that space, which I think is great. And businesses are always better when they can work together. And
absolutely, yeah,
that was a key founding point of that. It worked really well. If you managed to get a ticket, I mean, I didn't even manage to get to the Variety Jones pop-up. It really sold out in minutes. It was brilliant, really popular.
Yeah, it has a real vibe about it, that whole area. And of course, the distillery itself, it's an absolutely fantastic job of renovating that old power station into something rather special.
Yeah, it is. Well, it was a special building long before it became a distillery. I mean, I remember the first time I saw it when the hoarding was, before we even got to the point of striking ground in it, and I came to interview for the role. And it's gorgeous. It's a landmark. It's a very unique building.
Well, there it is there. I mean, it looks magnificent.
One of our very few Art Deco buildings, well, clearly designed in the 30s but built in the 40s, but one of very few like that in Dublin. So we're very lucky. Like it's a special building that deserved special treatment. I hope we've treated it right. I think we have. Yeah, it's a labour of love, and I think everybody else involved in the project from the start has always been in love with it. So,
yeah. I mean, what's your feeling when you go in there and walk in there every morning? Not that you have a long walk, but
it's a really, really unfeasibly short commute, and it literally takes me 5 minutes from my front door to get to the distillery, which some people would say is slightly unhealthy and sort of bordering workaholic kind of stuff. Actually, it's brilliant. I love it. And walking past it, I can always have a little check-in on the weekends and make sure everything's ticking over. But no, I mean, when I walk through the front door, I'm usually thinking, right, what are we doing today? Who have I got to check in with? What's going on? What's coming in the rear yard? What we're making? It tends to be full on from start to finish, because it's mainly, I say we're partially automated, but it's manual on the top level. So there's a lot of running about for the whole team. So it's a high energy plant, very deliberately.
And how many people are working there under normal circumstances? Obviously, things would have changed.
I've got a tiny wee team. So I've got two brilliant distillers working with me. Fiona, who's been with us from really the start of commissioning, is an superstar. And Natasha, who came to us last year with 10 years of brewing experience, so bringing a whole different dimension to the layers of experience in the teams. Fantastic. Lots of people don't believe that the three of us can run a distillery, but I can absolutely assure you that we can. It's very involved, sometimes including me, but no, hopefully not, because when I tend to get involved in the control room, I upset the balance, and Fiona and Natasha know what they're doing. And when I turn up, I tend to either mess things up or not do things as efficiently. So I'm so lucky to have them. They are my total heroes. But it is very involved. We work hard.
Yeah, and here's a very historic part of the city, of course, the St. Patrick's Tower right beside you. No longer there with the windmills, but part of the grain store, and the famous pear tree beside it. That's several hundred years old. And what I love is there's a grunginess and an industrialness that's been maintained in the distillery. I mean, this is still maintained. This is part of the back part of the distillery, which I love.
100%. It's like I always describe it as a sort of cathedral of industry, because that's what it looks like. I mean, you can sit in the bar with the drink in hand, obviously, in days when we can be open, and look all the way up through the glass roof lights, and there's a whole there's another 100 meters really above you. It's spectacular. And it really is. It's a proper slice of the area, in that you can stand in the front of the bar and watch through the windows, see all the way through the still house, through to Thomas Street, and then all the way back through to really the guts of the brewery. So it's this sort of brilliant slice of the brewing and distilling history on Thomas Street, James Street, which we all know about, but bit of past, present, and future. So yeah, it's stunning. It's totally unique, and look, if it was up to me, I'd build a little flat for myself out the back.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that would make a lovely loft apartment to be.
It would make a lovely distiller's apartment. If anyone from CAPEX is listening, I would love to.
There's all the room at the back, which means you have room for expansion, of course, when you do get. So there's the distillery room, the fermenters and the washbacks there, and the still house.
Yeah. So again, you can sort of see the guts of the operation, really, and we wanted to keep everything in the one room deliberately so that visitors would have a full visual of everything going on from the bridge. And the bridge is pretty cool. I mean, being able to stand on top of production floor in a distillery is always brilliant, especially when you can see the whole lot. But yeah, look, it's a manual plant, so we did that deliberately so that we could showcase all these operations as traditionally and as honestly as we could. But we've automated a lot underneath, so I'm not running up and down the stairs to charge stills and whatnot. But no, the flavour impactful processes are all manual.
Yeah, I love walking over that bridge up at the top there and just looking down. It's amazing to see, and you look
everybody
out the window.
Everybody always judges the sort of the glass piece in the middle. It's amazing. People sort of walk around it and totally avoid it.
Yeah,
I think it's only me that goes and sort of jumps on top of it.
Tell us a little bit about these stills, Laura, because of course it's triple distillation here. And did you ever experience triple distillation before? Is this your first introduction to it?
Yeah, only by the use of an extra spirit receiver. So I've had experience of running 2 stills, extra receiver, and you can effectively run a triple distillation, but not in a 3 still array like this. But of course, what's interesting about this is that we can run it as double 2, and it runs as a pretty unique, unbalanced double distillation system with the wash still as your first stage, and the intermediate and spirit stills running as a sort of tandem spirit still. So we can actually do a lot with this. We can play a lot of tunes spirit character-wise, which is super, super cool. But in terms of triple distillation, actually running with 3 stills is, with 3 smaller stills like this is it's very challenging. You have a very slender spirit cut, and especially when you're working with your nose and with instruments, you blink and you miss it. So it takes a lot of management to not destroy all of the flavour that you've created in the brew house elements of the process.
How long did it take to bed down the systems and start producing the high quality that you'd be expecting? Was it immediate, or did it take a while to run the systems in and tweak it?
I think with any commissioning projects, and I joined the industry, I guess, at a pretty unusual, unique time, in that every project I've worked on has involved a commissioning stage. So I've worked with tons of startups, new distilleries. I'm kind of lucky in that respect because I've had a lot of experience getting things going, and every single project has different challenges and different quirks, and I think this one's been really interesting because we've worked retrofitting a distillery into an older building, and of course the building actually dictates a lot of what you can do with the plant and a lot of the placement of instruments and valves and runoffs and the technical side. So I guess you sort of, and I refer to this analogy a lot with distillation, in that we're learning to play a musical instrument, and that's exactly what commissioning is. So you can get it working quite quickly, but actually refining process, refining spirit character, that all takes time. And actually working with wooden washbacks, again, they take time to commission in. You've got to build your washbacks character, and that you can only do that by using them. So it's a long process to get exactly what you want, but we've been able to deliver that relatively quickly.
Yeah, I mean, is it the case that every still has its own characteristic, even if it's very similarly shaped? Is there a lot of variance then between the different stills?
well, still we know from experience that of course still shape does have an impact on character, and we've got some unusual stills here, especially our intermediate still in the middle there with its
I'm noticing the bulbous nature of the neck.
yeah. It's gorgeous, and if anyone's ever been to the Tanqueray Gin Distillery, you'll sort of recognize the shape of it. And we had the Tanqueray manager in like a couple of years back, and she was quite keen to find out where we'd got the top of our still. And of course it is an 1860s piece of copper that's had a fair bit of history in itself, in that it was part of the original Tanqueray Distillery in southwest London.
Right, okay.
And did a bit of a skirt around some gin distilleries in London before making its way up to Langdon in Essex, and then ending up in our coppersmith's yard in Alloa.
Yeah.
And it was used as a plant pot, actually, unbelievably. I sort of tell this story and people get really shocked. Why was a gorgeous bit of copper holding bulbs? But we had it restored, and we had it grafted onto a contemporary still body. So we have this kind of unusual hybrids. It looks more like a gin still, and certainly if you've worked with sort of schnapps gin stills, that's more what they look like. So we get this double reflux bulb, which is super cool.
Yeah, it's very unusual to see a double bulb there.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. It's my favorite still. It behaves itself nicely most of the time.
And the line arms are actually pretty horizontal as far as I can see, and quite wide. What characteristics does that give to the spirit?
So we're running to shell and tube condensers, but we're running quite warm there, and I guess we're looking for a characteristically fruity from the sort of fermentations we're running. We're looking for that kind of character. But we're actually doing something quite unusual in this plant, in that we're deliberately chasing two independent spirit characters that form part of our main character, which is a genius brief, which I love, that came from our blender, Caroline Martin. Yeah. And it means that we're deliberately seeking two very different fermentation profiles, which we're distilling independently and then blending up in our spirit receiver to a particular ratio. So I always describe that as blending starting at the distillery rather than at the finishing end of the process, which is what we're doing. So the line arms give us a little bit of flex in terms of what we can deliver. And then we have a lot of temperature control, because we run with a cooling loop, which means we don't use lots of water, and we can have a lot of control over the final temperature. And that allows us to, again, play a lot of tunes in distillation.
Yeah, so a lot of possibilities, a lot of permutations. Tell us about the fermentation process there. Are they wooden washbacks?
They are, and I think the first time I saw these, my heart sunk a little bit, because I really wanted some lovely stainless washbacks with cooling jackets and every tweakable parameter. And I saw these and kind of thought, what can we do with these? Actually, the really interesting thing, and I've completely changed my mind. I've totally come to love these as we've commissioned them in. Is that, again, with our sustainable cooling system, we can actually control a lot of the temperature and a lot of the ways that the fermentation behaves before it even hits the washback. So, and we can do that with quite a degree of precision. So actually, we're operating very traditional vessels in quite a contemporary manner, and actually that again gives us a lot of flex in terms of what we can do with them.
Yeah, can you get a kind of double fermentation? Is there the possibility of doing that with the temperature control, or?
Well, what we're really looking to do is set these up so that we deliver our fermentation that's going to give us ethanol, that's going to give us the bulk of our spirit. But we also want to set up the precursors that are going to help us deliver a lot of the flavour that we're then going to capture in distillation. And a lot of that flavour is generated in the secondary fermentation period. So that's bacterial colonies. Actually, essentially, we're growing these, like I call them living petri dishes, which is what they are. And you sort of notice that difference in longer fermentations when you're deliberately trying to chase some of these characters that then go on to form your fruity notes in the final spirit. And we're quite precious about those. In fact, we've done a bit of swabbing work on these, and it's quite interesting. We've got two competing colonies that haven't outcompeted each other, that are growing in the washbacks themselves, which is super interesting and not totally unusual. It's not unheard of, but it's certainly the distillery donating its own character And that's the important thing about all of this, is that these will have their own character no matter what you do with them. And you have to learn how to manage that too. And that's part of the role and part of what we do in the distillery.
Yeah, so it's possibly picking up some of the fermentation and bacteria from the surroundings as well.
Well, it's lactobacillus and acetobacter really, and those go on to form lots of precursors that go on to create the fruity esters that we're looking to capture in distillation.
Yeah, I know people will be wondering, like, what capacity are these stills here, Laura?
So our wash still is the full working capacity of one of washbacks, which is 14,000 litres, and we're sending everything through the one stream. So our intermediate still 6,600, and our spirit still it's around about 3,500 at net capacity. So that's fill capacity. So we're working with quite slender batch sizes.
Yeah, and can you give us an indication of what percentages are coming off at each still alcohol?
Yeah, sure. So strength off the wash still itself is around about 21% off the still, and then we lose a bit once we send everything back to the receivers. The intermediate, it can be sort of between 60 and 65 ordinarily, and then the spirit is much higher. So triple distillation, again, you're refining it more. So we're looking at about 80%, 81% usually.
Yeah. What would you say to those people that say that, triple distillation probably strips too much flavor as opposed to double distillation? Is that a myth?
Absolutely. Look, it depends how you run it. I think triple distillation is extremely challenging to work with, in that, again, it is a destructive process. Distillation is destructive, and when you're going to the lengths that we're going to in fermentation to be able to build all the flavour and character into the spirit, into the wash at pre-distillation stage, you've got to be very sensitive to that when you're running your stills, and getting those sweet spots definitely takes time. And you can overcook it or you can undercook it, and it's the skill of the distiller to be able to find that sweet spot.
Yeah. What are the variables for distilling that are not part of the equipment? I mean, how big a factor is temperature? How big a factor is climate and the general conditions?
That's a really interesting question, and of course, we can talk about that seasonally as an example in the distillery itself. I mean, what happens during the winter months is very different to the summer months. In fact, in the summer months, it's much more challenging to create certain spirit characters. So we just have to manage our process differently. Now, we're really lucky because we have so much control over cooling, which allows us to do that. But if we didn't have that, if we weren't in the middle of a city where we had access to those kind of facilities, or if we were working off a natural water supply, we'd be very dependent on that. So, of course, all these elements can have an impact, and they can have an impact on the way you manage your fermentations, the speed of your distillations. I had a conversation quite recently about how sea level versus altitude and the impact on distillation. And of course, that has a massive impact. It changes your boiling point. So without sort of getting too nerdy, everything that happens around you can impact your process. And again, that's part of the skill of the distiller, is to be able to manage all of those elements.
Yeah. Where was I reading something recently about a distillery opening up in the foothills of the Himalayas, or the highest distillery in the world? And I can't imagine the challenge.
I'd love to visit.
Yeah,
to visit. I've done a bit of travel around there and sort of visited distilleries in Pakistan and sort of northwest India. So that sounds very, very cool, and I'm sure that would have an impact.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to touch on. You visited an awful lot of distilleries from around the place, I've noticed. You've traveled extensively. What are the ones that really struck you on your tours?
Well, first of all, I'm a total whiskey nerd, so that's it's not that sad for me to spend a lot of time visiting distilleries, but if you end up on holiday with me, it's a completely different story. So I tend to have to sort of plan in little adventures for myself, where I'm not going to offend too many people by sort of dragging them around places they don't want to see. But standout distilleries, I don't know, I was really lucky sort of before I ended up moving into a sort of career change phase of life and going back to school to study distillation. I went on a very long trip. I bought myself a one-way ticket to New Zealand and came back via distilleries in Australia and East Asia, and all through the sort of, I guess, the Silk Road is how you describe it.
Yeah.
So distilleries that stood out, well, let's definitely say the Murray Brewery in Pakistan is fascinating.
Right.
It took a bit of a lot of investigations to be able to get in there, but when I did, it's an incredible place. It's a distillery with a history going back to the 1820s. Since moved to an army base, and lots of people don't believe that like any alcohol is made in Pakistan, but it is. It's run by a Parsi family that have owned it for a few decades now, and they make an incredible beer and some whiskey, bizarrely. That was very interesting. I think anywhere
such a
in
universal
the world is fascinating.
Yeah, such a universal language, whiskey. It's great to be able to go and visit other countries and
100%. That's it. It is a universal language, and it's global. It's a totally global category. I think if you ended up in any country in the world, you'd probably find a distiller or somebody that was into whiskey, and then that's brilliant.
Had they heard of Irish whiskey when you were there, just as a matter of interest?
100%. Yes, they had. Irish and Scotch, and were very keen to find out more about it. And actually had visits from a couple of people, not too many, but they did mention a few journalists that had made the trip out there.
Okay. Excellent.
It's a very interesting trip. If you can ever sort of find a reason to go, then it's...
How long were you away for, Laura?
All in all, it's about 9 months, I think. It was just a big distillery trip, which it was brilliant, and some other stuff. It was super cool.
Yeah. Listen, take us back then to the beginning, if you like. You grew up in Scotland. Whereabouts were you born? Where did you grow up, and how did that influence?
I actually grew up just outside London. My family is Scottish, but I actually went to school and grew up in Bedfordshire, which is just north of London. My mum's from the east coast of Scotland, and they live up there. So we actually ended up moving up there a wee bit later. So the Black Isle is home for me when I'm back over the water, which is clearly not very often at the moment.
Yes.
If you know Scotland by distilleries, carry on driving north past Dalwhinnie, take a right at Glenord, carry on going on the coast road, you'll get to a wee place called Jemimaville, and that's home. It overlooks a couple of distilleries, Dalmore, Invergordon, and I think if you can squint, you could probably see Balblair as well. So it's a lot of whiskey history, and obviously, like, Dalmore was my first job in the industry. So
I'm noticing a common trait here, where you always seem to work close to home. You don't like a long commute.
Well, yeah, not always. I had a pretty long commute in my last job, so I was very keen to not have a plane involved in the commute for this one.
Yeah. Well, look, you didn't start off, obviously, with the intention of entering the whiskey industry. You were pursuing a career or studies in fine art, and you were doing DJing, and you did sound engineer. How did you get interested in whiskey, and how did you begin on the journey?
It always sounds like a bit of a mad story, but there is a sort of common thread through all of it, I guess. I actually left school when I was 16, which lots of people think is like not a typical route for a distiller. I got a job in a supermarket, and I had a very clear idea that I wanted to go to art school, and I found secondary school quite frustrating. I hated science. It was my least favourite subject, any of it. I blagged my way into art school on the strength of a portfolio that I put together after work in the evenings, and that's kind of what got me to a great, very conceptually led painting department. And of course, I got there and got very bored of brushes quite quickly and started messing around with other things. And I guess that's where the interest in this kind of stuff started, because I was very interested in the senses, and I guess taking things that could be physically tangible and using them as sculptural material. So I was very interested in sound, still am, obviously. I spent my 20s as a sound engineer and ended up studying it. And I was also very interested in perfume. Right. So again, all of these very sensory elements that you can't touch, but you can feel.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, whiskey has very similar chemistry to perfumery. In fact, we look at aroma and aroma interactions, and especially in whiskey blending, and a lot of it's very, very similar. You're talking exactly the same language. So that kind of felt captivating, because whiskey has all of these abject sides to it, which are much cooler. I mean, at the time, and it's not the same now, because perfumery is very different now, I think. But at the time I was getting into this, you couldn't really make perfume out of struck matches and burning wellies and all of these individually very abject elements, but put them together in a really beautiful way to make something delicious. And I think that's what I found fascinating about it, and sort of put it to bed, as I was working in music studios and doing a lot of DJing. But always had an idea that might be what I wanted to do, and I did finally. I was finally able to make it happen. Went and did a lot of traveling, like I said, and then went to Heriot Watt to study as a sort of grown adult at 30.
Yeah. How was that? How was the Heriot Watt experience for you?
It was brilliant, but it was heavy going, because I hadn't studied science since I was at secondary school. So I literally had to start from scratch before I went with secondary school science books and just teach myself again.
Yeah.
And actually, I enjoyed that a lot more than I thought I would. And actually, the research side of this is still what I'm very into.
Yeah. I mean, how relevant is the theory to the everyday practice?
I think it helps you to identify or problem solve quickly. So I think the theory is kind of essential if you're going to be running a plant, because your key job as a distiller is to be able to solve problems on the fly, and that's what we do. And they're always gloriously exciting, very challenging, and usually incredibly unique problems to solve. But the theory helps you to do that, and I think the educational piece is really, really important, actually.
What was it about whiskey? Were you a whiskey drinker, or was you just fascinated with the process or the history, or which element of it attracted you the most when you initially kicked off?
I think the process I found really fascinating, in that again, you take very, very simple ingredients, and they have such a sort of connection to place and people, and individually quite innocuous. It's so simple, really, and it's historic. I mean, the history of brewing goes back thousands and thousands of years, and it was still the same process. That's what's. It hasn't fundamentally changed in all of that time. Fermentation is the same process. But the sensory side is really what drew me to it, and I think I love that about whiskey in particular, is that it has such a connection to people and place, and it's about memory for me, and about how you encode those, and how your brain remembers something that's delicious, which is exactly how I'd remember a work of art, or something at a time I've been really happy. It's got all these really positive connotations that I think I remember great places I've been to. I associate them with the whiskies I've tried on my travels. That's, I think, what I love about it. It's a visual diary of everywhere I've been.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, it does attract all the senses, I think. We were talking about this earlier, and I was trying to figure out how you actually visualize or think of flavor in your own mind.
It would be very visual for me, and I talk a lot about us creating blocks of flavor in the distillery. So I guess I've got I think about it very sculpturally, because I think that's what chemistry is. It's a very formal sculptural language. That's all it is. I make so many connections between my art school education and how I think about chemistry, that's just how I understand it, and that's what we do ultimately. So whenever I think about building flavors, I think about them like that. It's a bit like building a cathedral. You start with the blocks, and then you finesse them and create the detail.
Yeah. In terms of what you're doing, then, head distiller, kind of people might be thinking the main role or the only role you do is around distillation, but obviously your role takes on far more hats than just distilling. So you're kind of operational manager in a sense of the distillery. You deal a lot with the PR and the public.
Yeah, and look at there's very very few occasions now where I'm pulling valves in the distillery, sadly, as much as I'd love to be. I mean, sometimes I do go and sort of troll the production floor and annoy everybody by getting involved and pulling valves, but I would love to be climbing around there the whole day, to be honest. I'd love production.
Yeah.
But the reality is that's not my job. My job is to empower my team to be great at their jobs, to help them on the way to also being brilliant distillers, which is what I want them to be. And that's one side. There's the people side. There's obviously the PR side. There's the innovation side, which takes up a lot of time and forging our path for the future and production planning. And then a lot of the stuff that we talk about, because ultimately we're a very small team at Rowe & Co, and a lot of the strategic stuff we bat around between each other because we're all whiskey lovers at heart. And it's very much, it's a startup. I know we're part of a big business and we have the backup of big business, but really amongst our team, it's very much a startup mentality.
Yeah, I mean, people may think automatically that being backed by Diageo, the distillery, is a big high production distillery. It's far from that, really. It does have that very industrial kind of, I won't say makeshift, but it's not as, and maybe it's deliberate as well. It's not as super polished and super automated as maybe.
You're absolutely right.
Bigger distilleries.
And it was intentional. Yeah, 100%. I mean, we are, in terms of Diageo scale, we are the smallest Diageo operational distillery. I mean, that's a fact. And the pilot plant is smaller than us, but in terms of operational distilleries, we are the smallest. We deliberately designed our plant to be, I'm going to say, partially automated again, because there's some operations in the basement we just can't be running up and down the stairs to be running manually. But no, the stillhouse floor, again, all the flavour impactful processes are all manual.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's because we wanted to be as open as we could about how we make things. So we are using dip rods. We're not using flow meters. We're using instruments in a safe. We're using our noses. We're using all the things that probably you might not associate with big business. And again, that's Diageo wanted to do that. We wanted to do that.
Yeah. How much creative freedom do you have in developing profiles, or are you given a brief that you follow, or do you have in mind what you're aiming for yourself?
So obviously, like the key production plan we have is for the spirit for the blend in the future, and we did have a brief for that. Obviously, with any brief, like starting in a new distillery, it's always going to involve creativity. I think sometimes we talk about the distillery end of whiskey as being less creative, and I fundamentally think that's not true. You have to be creative in the stillhouse environment. And actually, this is it's been an absolute joy, to be honest, to be part of commissioning that spirit character. It's presented all sorts of challenges. A lot of these things we don't have experience of running organisationally before. That's not what Diageo distilleries have done previously. So a lot of it's new to the business as well, believe it or not. I mean, we've got tons of experience that's helped us guide us through, but no, generally we've been forging a lot of new ground, which is super exciting. And then in terms of like innovation, we always designed the plant to be able to do different things. And actually we do have a lot of creative freedom over that.
So primarily single malt, but I mean the end product will probably be blends, will it? Or
so obviously
is single malt
our mainline blend is that's our focus, and delivering the malt whiskey component for that is the focus. But absolutely, we can produce single malt. We're laying lots of malted barley spirit down. So I mean, we could be releasing single malt. We could do a lot of things. We have the functionality to make pot still, for example. So I mean,
you could do double distilled pot still even in there as well, couldn't you?
We could, and actually we've laid down some double distilled spirit already. So that's already happened with a completely different spirit character. In fact, I'm just checking up on that one at the moment, and it's super exciting. That's been in cask a year now. So
how far ahead are you planning?
Lora plans are sort of running a century ahead and hoping that I've got about 5 lives, but The reality is, no, I mean, in whiskey, you always have to be thinking 15, 20, 25 years ahead.
Really?
And,
Yeah.
We're focusing on the next 5 years in terms of lots of our innovation projects at the moment, and getting those into getting those lined up to deliver objectives that I may not even see myself. I mean, you're always thinking about the future, and I always talk about this as a bit of time travel as a distiller, but lots of these projects are, they're things that are going to be gifts maybe for someone else. Who knows what they might become, but it's laying down these blocks of flavor that's the important part.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the beauty of the whole thing, is that you're creating for somebody else. You're not necessarily creating for yourself. You're creating for...
don't get me wrong, I would love to see some of these projects come to fruition, but the reality is some of them are going to take 15, 20 years perhaps. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, the whiskies you have released, obviously they're sourced whiskies at the moment, and I think you've released 3: the 2019 cask strength, 2020 cask strength, and then your standard one. And actually, we were talking earlier, and I was saying I couldn't find my Rowan Co, and I did actually manage to find it, and I am going to partake in a wee dram, being the day it is. So this is a 2019 cask strength blend. So I had a little nibble of it earlier, and it must be 2 or 3 months since I actually had a drop out of it, because I couldn't find it in here. But I don't let this image here make you think that the rest of the office is like this.
All right, I've got all of my washing just literally out of pot, so I'm the same.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do with a bit of camera work. But look, Sláinte anyway, I wanted to wish you a happy Irish Whiskey Day and continued success. And I don't know if you're having a dram yourself, or are you taking it easy?
I will be later, absolutely.
You will be later.
I've got a current cask strength, which I'm enjoying at the minute, so I'll be pouring myself a wee dram soon.
Yeah, and one thing I do notice about all 3 I've tried so far, they are very fruity.
Yeah.
And this one actually, this is a kind of a bubbly gummy note to it as well, which is maybe that's just me picking it up. That's a 2019 cask strength.
No, I think that's a really key characteristic of, and it's one of the things we talk about on the distillery tour. Actually, it's got this real sweety note to it, which is lovely. I always find that on the back of my palate, and it's one of the 4 layers of flavour that we talk about on the tour, and something that obviously is a key profile in the blend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm drinking this. It certainly doesn't drink like it's 59% or somewhere roughly around there, but but
it doesn't. And you don't pick up that at all on the 2019. I think it's what was really nice about that one for us is to just really show off. That's Rowan Co in its purest, rawest form. That's it's not reduced. That's the blending vat. That's essentially everything straight out of cask.
I mean, the branding across everything, from the industrial design of the distillery and the layout, right through to the bottle itself, which is very different to what we would have seen before. It's all very cohesive and all very, I'd say industrial is probably the right term, but done in a modern way. It's all good branding. Yeah,
look, I mean, we designed everything. I say we, like that's clearly lots of work from our brilliant global marketing manager, Hayley, who should be taking all the credit there. And we work with some brilliant designers, and the inspiration for that comes from Dublin 8. I mean, that's that's the colour. That's the rooftops that you see. It's that oxidized copper, which is beautiful. So it's supposed to be very reflective of this part of Dublin, and I think it does the job.
Yeah, I mean, I remember visiting the distillery once and coming from Guinness building across the road underground and entering the distillery that way.
The steam tunnels, my goodness, they're just brilliant. Actually, the end of that tunnel now opens just before the basement door into our sort of lower still house, and I kind of perpetually worry that something's going to just run out of this corridor in the middle of the evening shift or whatever. It's a hidden door to another world, but St James's Gate is just a crazy sight. That there's this vast network of just underground walkways and adventures to have.
How much tourism do you get as an offshoot of people visiting the little-known brewery of Guinness?
Well, if you look at our capacity and then look at the storehouse, I mean, there's a bit of a mismatch.
Yes.
If everybody from the storehouse turned up at the distillery, we would not be able to serve everybody as we would like. We just can't take that capacity, those number of guests. But yeah, of course, I mean, it's great to see people that are into Guinness suddenly get an interest in whiskey. So that I think is always fab. We'll always have a close relationship.
I just want to show a few more photos here because, like I say, I really do like this building as a visitor, and even to go and sit in the lobby and just have a cup of coffee there. But there you see that famous stairwell that leads to room 106. Is that room 106 at the end?
Yeah, that's it. So that's our sort of it's a monument to Caroline's brain and all the work that she put into the blend. My goodness, an old picture of me.
Well, I think that was on the opening day. So yeah, haven't aged a day. And there's the stairwell. I mean, it's what you should do is do one of those screens where the grass appears to crack underneath. When people are going across. And so this isn't room 106, or is it? No.
Yeah, no, that's
this is room 106.
Room 106.
And that's Alan, is it?
That is the legendary Alan Mulvihill.
Mulvihill, which if he's listening, hello, Alan. And a fabulous room, a really fabulous room where you can showcase the spirit that you're producing.
No, it's a gorgeous room, and we're lucky to have the space to be able to do that. Obviously, modeled by Alan.
Yeah, would I be right in saying that the first release was very much aimed at the new person to whiskey, or the cocktail crowd?
I think it was the whiskey itself is designed just to be flexible, to be versatile. So we wanted it to be delicious, straight up. So as a sipping whiskey, but obviously the versatility in a mixed drink was really important because we worked with bartenders to make sure that we were delivering exactly what they wanted from a blended whiskey. And obviously the bartenders were all industry legends here in Dublin that worked very closely with Caroline in the blend formulation. And I think that is really unique about the blend itself. I mean, we went for that higher ABV so that the whiskey did retain its character in a mixed drink, which I think is really important.
I do get a really off the blend of the standard release. I mean, I get a really ripe pear note off it as well. And I think that's just
I think the orchard fruit again. It's a key part of the profile. And it makes it very approachable. And yes, I mean, hopefully it's approachable to a very wide range of whiskey drinkers. And if that's new drinkers or people that already love whiskey, we don't sort of have I don't think anybody that makes whiskey has a particular drinker in mind. They want their whiskies to be enjoyed as many and whoever people.
Yeah. This is the flavors workshop. So, I mean, you've done an awful lot of work with bartenders. That's a rather small picture. Sorry, there's the room 106 again. And it's a fantastic layout. And does everybody that go on the tour get to go in there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, we take, our tours are pretty small. So that would be the whole group that you can see the seats for around the table. So those boxes that you see there open up, and we have some sensory pods and some I guess some triggers. We've got some sweets, some other little sensory triggers that you can compare with the whiskey, and helps people to understand just the multiple layers of flavour and aroma in their glass.
Yeah, I have a mini version of that box actually here that I
very good.
keep.
Oh, you've got one.
The
Super
little one,
cool.
yeah, they were cool. They had the aniseed and the star anise and
yeah,
things
that's
like
it.
that.
I'm really jealous. I don't actually have one of them. So
oh well, I might part with it if you're. But look, I mean, again, here you get the industrial look as well. Up at the top, you can see the exposed. I just love the vibe on it there. I think it's. Let me see if we can go the right direction. So this is the cocktail tasting experience room. So you have a lot of bartenders, or you did have a lot of bartenders coming out and getting training and experiencing the various elements of it there.
Yeah, look, that's a lovely room. It allows us to do all sorts of things, but like as an introduction for people learning how to mix a drink that they're going to like. It's brilliant. And that's the whole purpose of the experience. We got loads of feedback from people that would sort of, they might have been put off by whiskey because they were going into a bar and not being able to order a drink that they knew they'd like. And that's the whole point of this, is to teach people how to make and ask for a drink that they're going to like every time.
Yeah, no, it's great. I visited that room and it's so well laid out, and really, I think the sensory experience of the whole thing is amazing. But then on the ground floor, I think this is on the ground floor as you come in at the back. These are the cask strength whiskies that you can actually buy directly in the distillery. So obviously they change every so often. Again. That is, they are on hold, I guess, as well, obviously at the moment. But
they are. But obviously, when we open back up at some point, they'll be available. And the grain is delicious. It's absolutely one of my most favourite.
I really do enjoy grain whiskey. I think there's maybe I won't say a snobbery element on it, but the flavour that can come out of some of those grains is amazing.
100%. I'm a massive fan of grain whiskey myself,
especially at that high ABV, 59.2 there. Yeah. Okay, so this is what we were talking about. Having events in the premises, and this was one of the oysters and shellfish here with the Sally Boy. That was one of the events, and this is here on the bar.
Brilliant. And that's the bar, yes, and that's cask strength 2020. So that's our most recent release. Which is a cracker if you manage to get a bottle.
I was actually looking at it, and I was looking to I think I have one here, but if not, I've seen that it's sold out on your website. But I think Celtic had a couple of bottles available, so that's 74 euro.
75 euro.
Yeah, 75 euro for a 13-year-old. Again, obviously it's a sourced whiskey, but it's sourced from what we believe to be a very reputable company.
I couldn't possibly comment on that, no. But I can say that this is well, look, I would very happily part with my cash, as I already have done for a couple of bottles of this. It's delicious. It's a cask driven, very much about the port, but it hasn't lost its identity as Irish whiskey. There's a lovely, we've talked about this before in tastings, but there's a lovely ginger note to it. It's definitely got the Irish whiskey ID, but also really showing off the difference, I think, between this is European oak and it's a different flavour in the palate. So.
Yeah, I definitely see port finish making a big comeback. In terms of
it's beautiful. It's one of my most favourite profiles, and all that damp oakiness you get at the back. It's just it conjures up so many different images, but it's just delicious.
Yeah, this is the event as mentioned before, where you had hospitality in the courtyard. But and this is a collaboration you did with Cask and Keg last year.
Yeah, indeed. So this was really cool, actually. I really loved these whiskies. We worked on this with the Open Gate Brewery, and they made some beers for us, which they then put in some of our old whiskey casks, or our used whiskey casks, and we then went on to put some of our whiskey back in the cask, obviously when the beer had been disgorged. And actually what we found, especially on the Citra, which was a really gorgeous IPA, is that a bit of Brettanomyces had got into the cask itself and then done some really interesting stuff. And it's just, it's super cool. So it's a Citra IPA cask finish whiskey.
They're no longer available, are they?
I think they are. I'd have to double check that one. I think they are available. I'm not entirely sure where, so that's one I'd have to come back to you on. But it's definitely worth seeking those out if you can.
So that's which is that the 2019 one, I think.
Yeah,
the one I'm drinking now. Yeah. Your 2020. So this is the 13-year-old from somewhere north of Dublin, possibly. And this is your mainstay seller here.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, they're very well priced, I think. I mean this one in particular, €75 for that is great value.
Yeah, and look, it's something we were really keen to keep consistent. Is like good whiskey at a good price, and I think we've been able to achieve that on all of these, and that's the point.
One of the great things, I suppose, with being part of a huge organization is that sourcing casks. You're going to get the very best quality casks.
Well, I think we are lucky to be able to have a global network to refer to get amazing casks. We've got loads of contacts in Ireland that can do that, and obviously internationally. I mean, quality is everything.
Just going back to the tasting room there, a few more shots of it there. I mean, how many can it take actually? Is it 12 or 13 or something?
So our original tour size was 16. Obviously, when that was back in the before times when we were able to open as we originally intended. But yeah, it was 16 in a group. So
yeah, it's great that they kept the old electric
I
dials and power things. Yeah,
absolutely love them. I would have them in my own house if I could find any more out of the back. But literally every single one of them has been repurposed. Yeah, they're just gorgeous. I think the detail, and we've got a table made of an old sort of pump in the bar as well. Things like that are just,
this is the bar.
There you go. Yeah.
I mean, it is beautiful. I know when I design my loft apartment, I'll come and speak to your designers because they're doing a great job there. It's such a shame that they're empty and they're not enjoyed at the moment. But look, let's hope that the day is back soon and we can go and 100%. Enjoy some time there. Yeah, I think last time I was there was a DJ party on. And
yeah, it's great. We've got the space to do that. And
were you DJing at it actually? Did you?
No, I haven't DJed in here yet. I would love to at some point, but the distillery sort of ends up kind of taking my time. If I'm on site, I haven't found a way to wheedle my decks and my record collection in yet. That's a work in progress.
Yeah. Well, look, it's a magnificent distillery, and the one thing I love is that you go in there and you're always available to have a chat, which is great. Or there's always somebody there, and even if you're not doing the tour, people will talk to you.
That's absolutely the point. That we want to offer a welcome. This is we're not we're there to welcome you into our home and to show you what we do. So there is always somebody available to chat, and we love talking about whiskey. All of us, all of our extended team in the experience too, all completely passionate about Irish whiskey. So if you get any of them to chat to, you'll be very, very, very lucky. The tour is brilliant. If you've never been, you absolutely should when we open back up, hopefully.
Have you been given any insight into when that's going to happen? Or
no, I couldn't say, and I don't think anybody could at the moment. I think we do what we need to do to get everything in a good place first. So no sign of that yet.
Yeah, I suppose we have to talk about Diageo's involvement in Ireland, and obviously they were the forebearers of Bushmills for a while, and they left that after a while. What was their decision to come back into Ireland and take on Irish whiskey and be part of its feature set?
So I think the decision to sell Bushmills was strategic at the time, and that sort of predates my involvement with the organisation. So I won't talk too much about it because I'm not furnished with all the facts, but that was a decision to go into tequila. I think the Rowan Co project certainly was never planned as a replacement, but we had an amazing building and an idea for a brand, and the Irish whiskey it's an exciting category. It's a dynamic category. That's the reasoning.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's a great welcome back, and it's done so much. Along with the other distilleries in the Liberties area, it's great to see the whole area really benefit from it. Just tell me, in terms of your previous roles, what were they, and how did you actually get this role in Dublin?
Sure. When I talked about it a wee bit earlier, but when I graduated from Heriot Watt, the industry was in quite a unique place in terms of spirits. I mean, there was only a handful of us at the time that weren't brewers on that course. So it was probably pretty unusual to be thinking seriously about a career as a distiller, or certainly in whiskey. But there was this gin boom that was starting. So sort of by proxy, I ended up working on a lot of gin projects as the first off, and they were all startup distilleries. And I guess I got a lot of hands-on experience like that very soon, quite early, working with some interesting projects and projects that some of them have only just really come properly online. Out of the blue, I got an opportunity to go down and work for a company in Merseyside on some startup distillery projects. So that was
that's right. The Liverpool vodka was one of them.
It's a company called Halewood, and they were sort of selling spirits but not distilling any of their own. And those were my first projects with them. So I was working with gin in Merseyside, and then a whiskey project in Wales, which is just about to release its first whiskey, I think, coming up a bit later on this year, which is super exciting.
Wow, yeah.
I've had a lot of, I guess I've been really lucky in that I've had a lot of experience with distillery startups.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I'm sure that, being, and I think in lots of different sectors, being there at the very beginning, at the coalface when things are starting off, you're really in at the deep end and starting to discover.
I think it's a absolutely brilliant experience. I think I always tell people, if you get the chance to work on a commissioning project, you'll get 10 years experience in a couple of months. You'll see everything that can go wrong, everything that can go right, and be solving all the things that you never expected to happen, because that's just what commissioning projects are. And they're brilliant. So I've been very, very lucky in that just about every project I've been involved with has involved bringing new stills in, which I've got colleagues that have seen that once in their career, for example. But I'm lucky to have moved around spirit categories too. I think working across
absolutely, that's a huge advantage, isn't it, with flavour?
It is, and I think gin in particular is, I always say this, but it's a great place to learn technical distillation. There's nowhere to hide, and if you muck it up, you can't do much about it. So it's great learning, I guess, the operational mechanics of distillation that way. And I did a bit of work with liquid development in that role, and then went on to Atom Brands, where I was head of distillation, working with vacuums again. So it's another different style of distillation, and working with MPD across boutique gin and RTDs and you name it. I mean, that was just a lot of fun. That was a sort of crazy, brilliantly creative environment, very, very fast paced. I mean, we could take a product idea from concept to a sales channel within a matter of weeks. It was really that quick. So it's learning to work quickly, learning to work to like some brilliant briefs. I got to work with an amazing bunch of people. And I got a call out of the blue about Rowan Co, which I didn't know much about, and I took the call really out of curiosity. And then you walk through the gates here, and it's very difficult to turn down something at St James's Gate. I think you can feel all this palpable history around you in this part of Dublin. And living in an amazing city is,
Must be a dream job in a way, you know. I mean, obviously you put in the graft and you have so much experience in a relatively short period of time. You're not talking 20 years, you're talking 10 years of a lot of different distilleries, a lot of different spirits. And
I've been lucky.
Yeah, I mean, that must really stand to you, having seen all that variety.
I think it definitely helps, and I think like as a confidence builder in terms of your own experience, I feel good walking into places knowing that I can solve a lot of problems, having seen all sorts of things and different challenges, and sort of seen different sides of the industry too, from liquid development to strategic planning, and everything that goes into a startup mentality. So I've just been lucky. I think part of that is being in the right place at the right time in the industry as it was starting to grow, but having a background as well in the sort of the very practical physics also really, really helps. And actually, funnily enough, my sound engineering has been the thing that's actually been the most beneficial in terms of
really
actual hard distillery operations. Yeah.
In what way is that useful?
Because if you're working practically with physics and systems, I think if you work with like you probably know yourself, but working with audio networks and systems of audio equipment, actually when you're talking about things like impedance, they're actually very they're really applicable when you start thinking about flow rates, when you start thinking about how to move around the plant. So when you start to be able to move between systems in your head, if you can apply those laws of physics between them, it's actually it's very relatable.
Yeah, well, I mean, electricity can be thought of very much as and sound waves, I suppose, can be thought of as fluids as well, I suppose. So there is definitely a correlation
there's a lot
there.
in common.
Yeah. If somebody wanted to pursue a career like yours, Lora, now, what would be your advice?
I would say, well, definitely do it, but you need to be very persistent and I'd say resilient. I hate encouraging people to be resilient because it sort of implies something that you kind of have to be tough to do stuff, and I think that's wrong too. I think we should be setting up environments for people to work where they don't have to feel like they need to be really resilient, but ultimately you do. It's a very competitive field. It can be difficult to get your foot in the door. I get probably, I'd say, about between 30 and 40 messages a month from people that are looking for advice on how to get into this side of the business, and I can't even respond to all of them, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'll stop doing that. I'll stop harassing you. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, I think that the important thing to realise is that there is no traditional route into this stuff, and I should be a prime example of that. I think if you can bring a skill set that is diverse but relatable, then you don't need to think of it as there being one way in. But I think qualifications definitely help, and I think we have access to a lot of that. And in Ireland here especially, we've got some incredible institutions that are doing brilliant things, and offering a lot of foundation routes to get you properly set up.
Yeah. What is it you like most about your job? What makes you most? What gives you the most satisfaction?
I think seeing people enjoy what we make. It's always about people first. I mean, there's tons of things that I like and enjoy and find really fascinating on the distillery floor and sensory. All of these bits are great, but ultimately what we do is about people. And it's about the people that I work with, that it's their reflection in everything that we make. It's never about one person. It's always about a team. And it's about the people that we invite in and introduce to our whiskey. They might already know the whiskey, but that is the greatest reward. And I think getting to sit and talk to people about what they find in it, talking to them about the flavors that they pick out, what they like most about it, even if they don't like it, ultimately all of this stuff is totally subjective, but I find that really inspiring.
Yeah. And are there many misconceptions about the role? Do people have a picture of what your role is, or any misconception about it?
It's definitely not standing around swirling a glass in my hand all the time. That I can say that's definitely.
Are you
not.
Sure? Yeah, there goes my romantic notion of a distiller out the window.
I kind of wish it was, but no, it's a lot of running around. It's high energy. It's a lot of meetings and a lot on the laptop actually, and a lot of it is very unglamorous. I spend as much sorting out issues with the building and cleaning, and actually 90% of what we do in the distillery is managing different levels of plant cleaning so that it doesn't impact on character. All of these things are the bits that you don't really hear about, but actually there is something fascinating and brilliant about all of them. So I would say that none of it is dull. All of it is all of it has the ability to be as challenging and exciting as you want it to be, and there's never a moment I'm bored, and that's why I love this job. Every day is slightly different. And I think if you spoke to anyone running a distillery, they'd say the same thing.
Well, especially in your case, I suppose, where you're part of a smaller team as well, you really, what you do really has an impact, and that must be really satisfying from your point of view.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's what we all love about it. And actually, a lot of what I do is hands-on training with our team too. And I love that too. I actually love people management, and inspiring other people is what I want to do more of. I'd love to have a few more people to work with to do that, to be honest. And if we can grow the team, and as it grows, that's something that I love, and teaching and that side of it too. So you have to kind of be into that a bit and be really passionate about communicating that and sharing knowledge. That's key.
Yeah, I mean, you so successfully kind of married the creative side, with your music, your art, your sound background, with the technology. I think that's they go so well hand in hand, and I don't think you can have one without the other when it comes to creating great whiskey.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And the tech is inherently creative. I always try and communicate that to people. And I mean, if you take a creative view to it, you can fix anything. And I think that's so I love so much about this stuff. You can have an idea, and it can be a really big idea, and you can be me and be 5'2" and have a big idea and make something that's sort of much bigger than you or your own capabilities, just through working with teams, with people, and with tech. That's fabulous.
Well, when do we expect to see the first inaugural release from your own stills? I can't imagine you're going to release anything far too young.
Clearly we're going to have Mature Spirit next year, but look, there's no time limit on when that's going to be released. And I don't think we've even thought about that. It's going to be when it's ready, to be honest. But look, I'm keeping a close eye on everything in the background, because it's super exciting, and I think sort of aware of a really nice spot, and a couple of things that I think might be super special for that in our inventory. So look, fingers crossed.
Wait and see.
No
is what you're telling us. Yeah, well, hopefully we'll be around to be enjoying the first one. But look, I mean, these blends and the single malts that you've released, I think they're fantastic. And what I would like them, they're all really approachable, and they have character, and they're sensibly priced, which I think is a credit, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you've enjoyed them, and that was certainly the intention. And like I said, great whiskey at good prices. That's what we're hopefully all about.
Yeah. Tell me, what do you make of the huge resurgence in Irish whiskey, and what's happening and how it's perceived? I mean, do you get a chance to relay that to your peers in other distilleries in Scotland and say, well, I'm in Irish whiskey and it's hugely successful?
Well, I think you don't even need to tell people that. I mean, it's very obvious that Irish whiskey is hugely successful, and has been for much longer than my involvement. The history of whiskey here obviously goes back centuries. It already had a fabulous reputation. I got into whiskey partially because I love Bushmills. I mean, this stuff's always been incredible. So I don't really need to talk to my peers, or bragging rights aside. I mean, again, the world of distillers is very global, so we all sort of
Absolutely.
know what each other are up to and exchange like messages. So I was actually just talking to a friend of mine working in a distillery in Copenhagen like a couple of days ago. That's the nicest thing about this industry, like the global network that it opens you up to is great. I think if you parachuted me into any airport anywhere in the country, I'd know a distiller within sort of a 50-mile radius. So we also keep up with what everyone's doing, and yeah.
Well, what I love is that, you know, the distillers, not only will they talk to other whiskey distilleries from anywhere in the world, but they'll talk to gin producers, spirit producers,
Oh, absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
wine producers, beer producers. There is, like you said, that common bond through everyone, which is great.
There really is, and that's how you learn, and that's how you get inspired. I mean, that's why I love going to distilleries, and I travel to the end of the earth to do it, to be honest.
Yeah. What emerging trend have you seen in Irish whiskey that really has grabbed your attention?
I think what's really nice is that consumers are becoming like, so they expect a level of diversity. They expect innovation. They're expecting flavour profiles in a way that's kind of unique to Ireland. Really, there is the expectation that you will deliver a whole range of flavours as part of your offering, a whole range of different experiences, which is actually fab. I mean, it just means that the quality benchmark gets higher and higher, and it already was high. Let's face it. I mean, we've been making amazing whiskey on this island for hundreds of years. But to see consumers get so involved in it, it's brilliant. So people.
Yeah, I always think the notion of comparing Irish whiskey with other world whiskies, Scotch included, of course, is kind of doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, other than, you know, when you come to talk about just quality, I suppose. But Irish whiskey stands on its own, I think, without having to be compared.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Like we're a global player in the global category of whiskey production, but we are a very key, very integral player in that.
And we're still a relatively small player in that world market, but obviously we are growing rapidly. What do you see as the challenges going forward? Is there anything that we should be wary of in your eyes, or are there opportunities that we shouldn't overlook?
I think that as long as we keep quality and the consumer at the forefront of what we do, then we're in good stead. And that's the key. It's always got to be, it's picturing everything that we do as distillers and blenders and makers is about people. It's about drinkers. It's about people who buy our products. And as long as that's absolutely at the core focus of what we do, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah. Going back to your own whiskey, then, just in terms of pairing it with anything else, in terms of food and as a cocktail, what are your choices for the standard release? Any recommendations for us?
In terms of cocktails, well, look, you need to talk to our bar team about that, because they've got an incredible list and they know what they're talking about. I'm a very amateur bartender, so I'm not even going to pretend, but I will give you a couple of recommendations that they've given me. They've taught me to make amazing sours, so that would be my sort of go-to cocktail with our blend 106. Actually, what I love, and it's a pretty it's a pretty high-end Boulevardier, but I have used our Cask Strength 13 in the Boulevardier, and I love Negronis. So Boulevardiers for me, that's a very easy win, and oh my goodness, that is one of the greatest Boulevardiers I have ever tried.
Really?
No hands down, but like clearly it's a pretty it's a bit of a nice one.
Yeah. Well, when you open up again, I'll go in and have a try. I'm a big fan of Negroni, actually, myself. Lived in Milan for a while, and of course that's
a very
my staple.
Favorite cocktail, really, outside of whiskey based. The Negronis are my total go-to, but Boulevardiers are well up there. So that would be my recommendation.
In terms of whiskey events, obviously everything's kind of locked down now. There's not much opportunity to take part in things and going to shows. Maybe Whiskey Live hopefully will go ahead this year. Any likelihood that you'll be partaking in some of the virtual events like a Belfast Whiskey Week, and I'm sure there are others that are going to come up as well?
So I'm sure we will be taking part in some online stuff. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what yet. I know that there's plans to do a lot of things, but I'm very sure that we'll be part of some of them. And online has been such a great tool for all of us over the last year, for sure. And
it's been a lifesaver in the one sense.
Yeah, and look, it's been brilliant in the sense that how it gives me the opportunity to be able to talk to people that I would not ordinarily be able to just pop over to LA on a Friday night and just have a chat, really. And it's great. It has opened up networks as much as anything else. But I can't wait to have a dram in person. It's never going to replace actually meeting people and about whiskey.
No. I mean, getting to meet people face to face is very, very different. Tell me, what are your ambitions then for the future? What are your plans? What are you looking forward to?
What am I looking forward to? Well, obviously, clearly looking forward to releasing and making more whiskey, and we've actually got some pretty cool things coming up this year that we've been working on.
Okay. Any hints?
So a couple of a pretty unique collaboration and some very interesting wood projects that we've got going on. I've got some very cool yeast projects. I think I can say that.
Yeah.
And without giving too much away. But really, I'm looking forward to getting the distillery back open to the public again, more than anything. I think it's very lonely in there without people, and we built it to welcome you all in. So that is what I'm looking forward to the most.
Yeah, I can imagine being in a building of that size and that nature would be difficult to go into when it's almost
like
empty.
A haunted house at night. I've been sort of camping out a couple of times in the bar my office, and it's definitely meant for people. So look, when we get opened up again, it will be a happy day.
Well, listen, thank you very much for taking the time. I'm sure you've had a long day, and taking the time and speaking with us is kind of, like I said, we wanted to talk to you for so long, and always enjoy having a chat with you, and nerding out and not nerding out. But I'm looking forward to actually going into the distillery, sitting in the front lounge, and actually the coffee there is excellent as well. If I don't,
the coffee is so good. Actually, must remind the team, because they've promised that I can learn how to use that coffee machine at some point. So I'm going to take them up on that. It's really good.
You'll probably end up re-engineering it or something, Laura, knowing you. But yeah, don't upset it too much. Don't upset it too much. Look, thank you very much for taking the time. I wish you the best of luck going forward. I'm looking forward to meeting in person, and I'm sure we're going to see some exciting things coming out of Roe & Co in the future. So best of luck with it, and I hope you have a long and successful career there, and you do get to try some of the ones you're laying down now.
Thank you. No, I'm certainly looking forward to it, and really appreciate it. It's been great chatting to you.
Yeah, and to you. Thanks very much again. Stay safe.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Hi, thanks very much to Laura for taking the time and joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed that chat. She's such a modest and talented distiller, and so generous with her knowledge. So I hope you picked up something there. And like everybody, we're all looking forward to the distilleries opening up. Look, just want to wish you a happy Irish Whiskey Day again. Look after yourselves. And yes, on Saturday, we have provisionally planned to do our visit in DLD, in Dublin Liberties Distillery. We'll be confirming that tomorrow. So sorry about that cancellation last weekend. One of their staff was ill, and obviously we didn't want to pressurize them to continue. And so the best move, I think, for safety of everybody was to postpone it. We'll confirm again this weekend whether it's going ahead on Saturday. Okay. Thank you very much. Take care. And as always, catch us here and on the podcast live. Thank you. Bye-bye.